Hello. Today we will be discussing how to complete the Nutrition Environment Food Pantry Assessment Plus, otherwise known as the NEFPAT Plus. The NEFPAT Plus was developed by the University of Illinois Extension in partnership with UI Health. In communities across the country, food pantries are essential for individuals facing food insecurity. For many pantry visitors, food insecurity often comes hand in hand with nutrition insecurity, which leads to health challenges. Neighbors often experience higher rates of conditions such as obesity, diabetes, high blood pressure, and heart disease. That's where the Nutrition Environment Food Pantry Assessment Tool Plus, or the NEFPAT Plus for short, comes into play. This validated tool, which is part of the SNAP-Ed toolkit, helps food pantries assess and improve their environment, practices, and policies to better promote health and nutrition. The goal of the NEFPAT Plus isn't to achieve a perfect score, but rather about identifying actionable steps to make food pantries healthier, more inclusive spaces for the communities they serve. By using this tool, pantries can track their progress over time, continually making improvements for the communities as a whole. The NEFPAT Plus is structured around 7 key objectives, all of which we will go over in depth. They include offering a variety of nutritious foods, promoting healthy choices, and increasing the involvement of neighbors. One of the foundations of the NEFPAT Plus is the promotion of nutritious foods, those that support overall health. The tool uses nationally recognized guidelines like MyPlate to ensure pantries are offering foods that align with best practices of nutrition. But the NEFPAT Plus isn't just about food. It's also about creating a space that promotes neighbor choice, health, and inclusion. The food pantries can adopt practices that encourage neighbors to select items that are culturally relevant, meet their needs, and are for their preferences. By adopting the NEFPAT Plus framework, food pantries can become more than just places where people collect food. They can become community hubs that promote long-term health, equity, and inclusion for all. Over the course of this video, I will be taking you through the NEFPAT Plus form and its 7 objectives. When starting the NEFPAT Plus, you will begin with the Pantry Information section. This section is used to collect basic pantry information. You will answer each question as it is asked. This section is simple and short, and you along with the pantry will fill it out together. You'll collect information like the pantry hours, how many people are served per month, and other logistical details. Next up, you will complete the sections listed under Objective 1. Objective 1 is all about making sure the pantry has a wide variety of fruits and vegetables available for neighbors. For this section, you'll need to assess what fruits and vegetables are on the shelves or incoming at the time of the assessment. You may guide yourself in each section using the Read Me First boxes highlighted in yellow. This will offer you guidance and instructions on how to fill out each objective. Let's start with the basics. For each item, you'll want to count all forms of fruit and vegetables available. That includes fresh fruits and vegetables, canned, frozen, dried, and even juiced fruits and vegetables in 100% juice. For example, if your pantry has apples, applesauce, dried apples, and apple juice, that all counts as one fruit, apples. So even though they are from different forms, they are all considered the same fruit. Same goes for vegetables. If you have tomatoes, tomato sauce, sun-dried tomatoes, and tomato juice, that counts as one vegetable. Now let's take a look at how you'll score this section. There are 3 parts to this objective, and here's how you'll find them out. Does your pantry offer at least 5 different fruits? Count how many unique fruits are available, remembering to consider all forms: fresh, canned, frozen, dried, and juiced. Does your pantry offer at least 5 different vegetables? Again, count all forms of vegetables you have in stock. And finally, does your pantry have more than 10 different types of fruits and vegetables combined? Add up your total of fruits and vegetables. If the total exceeds 10 or is 10, you may check this box. Once you've gone through all the fruits and vegetables, total up how many boxes you've marked. The score for this section is simple, 1 point per box checked, for a total of up to 3 points. And that's it. For reference, you can always use the MyPlate Fruits and Vegetables list from the NEFPAT Plus Toolkit Guide to help you identify the different types of fruits and vegetables that include a variety of cultural produce items to ensure you're including the diverse foods that may come through the pantry as well. Objective 2 of the NEFPAT Plus is all about ensuring the pantry is offering nutritious foods in each of the My Plate food groups. So let's dissect each one. To complete this section, you'll need to evaluate the foods available at the time of scoring. The goal is to mark off at least one item in each checkbox under the 6 categories. Let's start by looking at each category and how you'll evaluate each type of food. For fruits, you'll want to focus on items that are fresh, packaged in water, or 100% fruit juice. You will also consider fruits with no added sugars or sauces. You will count fresh, frozen, canned, jarred, dried or dehydrated fruits, and fruits suspended in 100% juice. Let's say you have fresh apples, canned peaches in 100% juice, frozen strawberries, and dried raisins. You would count those as all fruits in this section. Now for vegetables. The same concept applies. No added sauces, no added salt or sugar, or labeled as low sodium with 140 milligrams or less per serving. And just like with fruits, you'll count vegetables that are fresh, frozen, canned, jarred, and dried or dehydrated. And make sure to check the labels for low sodium as well. An example of these vegetables might look like fresh broccoli, canned green beans labeled low sodium, frozen corn, and dried mushrooms. All of these count as vegetables. Moving on, we have animal-based protein. For this section, you'll count items that are fresh or frozen with no breading or marinades, meats packed with water, not oil, and lean cuts like sirloin, chuck, or poultry. Also, don't forget fish, shellfish, and eggs. Let's say you have fresh chicken breasts, canned tuna in water, and eggs. You'll mark all of those as animal-based protein. Next, we have plant-based protein. In this section, you'll want to look for dried beans, lentils, or canned beans marked low sodium. Again, 140 milligrams or less per serving. Nuts, seeds, and foods like tofu or other soy-based or vegetable-based blends. An example of what these foods might look like is a box with dried lentils, canned black beans labeled low sodium, almonds, and tofu. All of these would count for plant-based protein. Let's move on to grains. For grains, you'll count items that have whole grain as a first ingredient, or foods that are labeled as good or excellent source of fiber. Look for items like whole grain breads, pastas, and tortillas. Brown rice, quinoa, barley, oats, and cereal counts too. Let's say the pantry has bagged whole wheat bread, brown rice, whole wheat pasta, and whole grain cereal boxes. All of these count for this section. And finally, dairy. In this section, you'll count reduced fat, low fat, and non-fat milk, yogurt and cheese labeled as non-fat or low fat, and non-dairy alternatives like soy milk or almond milk. Just make sure they are unsweetened or labeled as plain. To complete Objective 2, go through each category and check off the boxes for foods that meet the requirement. There are a total of 24 possible points, and that's how you fill out Objective 2 of the NEFPAT Plus. Moving on, we have Objective 3. Objective 3 of the NEFPAT Plus is all about increasing neighbor choice for nutritious foods. This section will help the pantry ensure that they are offering more flexibility and healthier options for neighbors. There are 5 key practices that we'll be checking to determine how well the pantry supports neighbor choice and where there might be room for improvement. We begin by talking about neighbor choice in Model 3A. This model lets neighbors select foods they might want rather than handing them a prepackaged box of food items. And this model could take many forms. We have window style, where neighbors look at available options through a window and make their selections. Table style, where food is arranged on tables and neighbors take what they like. Menu style, neighbors are given a menu of the pantry's food options that day and they make their selections based on that. Online, perhaps the pantry has a capacity to make an online pre-order form where neighbors can pre-select their preferred food items. And finally, market style. This model allows neighbors to walk through aisles with shelves and pick off food items that they would just as a grocery store. To mark the checkbox in the first section of Objective 3, you need to make sure the pantry allows neighbor choice from at least one of the My Plate food groups. As a reminder, the My Plate food groups are fruits, vegetables, protein, grains, and dairy. So as long as neighbors have the freedom to choose from one of these, you may check off the box for the pantry. Next, we want to make sure the pantry is offering items from all 5 of the My Plate food groups in Section 3B. This is important because it gives neighbors a complete range of nutritious options to choose from. Let's take a look at an example. If the pantry has fresh produce, canned beans labeled low sodium, whole grain pasta, low fat milk, and bagged raisins with no added sugar, then the pantry is offering one of each from the My Plate food groups. Moving on to 3C. This section looks at how the pantry is sourcing these nutritious foods. We ask if the pantry is using grant funds, donations, or so on to make purchases. Maybe they host food drives, or they take food donations from other food drives. If the pantry does either of these, you may check off the box for 3C. Next, we have 3D, which is all about the fresh produce the pantry sources. And this can mean that the pantry sources fresh fruits and vegetables from gleaning programs where food is gathered from farms, also known as farm to shelf, community gardens where the pantry or the community it serves grows their own produce, local farms that donate or sell directly to the pantries, and finally we have ampleharvest.org. If you or the pantry have not heard about ampleharvest.org, it is a nationwide program that connects pantries with local farmers. If the pantry is sourcing fresh produce through any of these outlets, make sure you check off this box. And finally, we have 3E. This section will look at the frequency of the food distributions. The NEFPAT Plus aims for a frequency of more than once per month. This can be an important way to ensure that neighbors have access to fresh and nutritious food items and can return when they need more. If the pantry allows neighbors to visit more than once for food, be sure to check off the box for 3E. After you go through all 5 categories, you may score Objective 3. The pantry will earn 1 point per box checked for a total of 6 possible points. And that's it for Objective 3. Let's dive into Objective 4 of the NEFPAT Plus, which is all about how the pantry markets, promotes, and nudges nutritious foods. You'll notice that this objective focuses on how the pantry can encourage neighbors to make healthier choices and making them visibly appealing and easily accessible. Each practice will focus on the physical setup of the pantry as well as the efforts currently being made to encourage healthier choices. Section 4A is all about signage. Does the pantry use visual cues to encourage neighbors to make healthier choices? There are 2 main types of signage to look for. The first one is point of decision signage. These signs or labels are placed next to food items intended to be promoted, and this may look like a sticker that says good source of fiber or low sodium next to canned items. We also have general healthy eating signage. You can find these materials on My Plate. They include posters, window stickers, and large signs with general healthy eating suggestions. You might see a poster that says, make sure half of your plate is fruits and veggies, or something along the lines of eat rainbow, fresh produce. If the pantry uses either or both of these types of signage, you may check the box off for 4A. Now for 4B. The NEFPAT Plus is looking at how the nutritious foods are displayed. Perhaps they are at the very front of the pantry nicely displayed in baskets. To score this section, the food items should be displayed at the front of the pantry or above other foods that aren't as healthy. This might look like placing fresh fruits and vegetables at eye level on shelves or having them placed at the beginning of the pantry's distribution. If the pantry hands out prepackaged box, they might put these items last so that they sit at the top of the box. If the pantry makes these efforts, you may check off the box for 4B. For 4C, we are looking for bundles. Does the pantry display foods together as part of a meal or recipe? This makes it easier for neighbors to see how they can create a healthy, balanced meal with just a few ingredients. In 4D, we talk about recipes. Does the pantry provide recipe cards, whether they are placed next to food items, placed in bags, included with specific ingredients, or however they may be utilized? It counts towards this section. And finally, 4E. Are the nutritious foods easily seen and within reach? This can mean that they are placed at eye level, foods are clearly labeled, and they're easily accessible to both neighbors and team members. After you review all of Objective 4, tally up these points for a total of 6 points possible. And that's it for Objective 4 of the NEFPAT Plus. Objective 5 of the NEFPAT Plus consists of 3 main areas: food safety and handling practices, nutrition policy and guidelines, and neighbor service and inclusivity practices. You'll notice that based on these areas, Objective 5 focuses on the important guidelines that ensure the pantry operates efficiently and in a way that supports the overall well-being of the community it serves. Let's begin with Section 5A. Here we're looking for food safety practices. These practices may look like signage that clearly states safe food handling guidelines like washing hands and proper food storage. This can also include expiration and best-by dates. You'll also want to consider written policies in this section that also offer guidelines for safe food handling and food safety. You may ask the pantry if they have any other practices that also ensure that food is handled and distributed safely. If the pantry makes any of these efforts, you may check off the box for Section 5A. Next, we have Section 5B. This section is all about nutrition policy. The pantry must have a written nutrition policy of guidelines that explain in detail the following: some kind of statement of purpose. This will explain why the food pantry serves the community and what their goals may be for promoting healthier food options. An outlined nutrition system. This will allow the pantry to grade foods based on their nutritional values. For example, the pantry allows neighbors to take as much celery as they want, but will put a limit on other foods of less nutritional value. Foods they want to increase or promote. This section will outline the types of food the pantry currently encourages neighbors to choose more of, like fruits and vegetables, whole grains, or lean proteins. Communication of policy. You may want to ask the pantry how they currently share or plan to share the policies they have in place with their network. And finally, review of policy. Ask the pantry if they have a process that makes sure their policies are reviewed and updated at least once a year. Finally, we have 5C. Here you'll be looking at practices that promote neighbor service and inclusivity. Does the pantry have a policy or training of some kind that explains neighbor service best practices and show how to provide inclusion? This might highlight respect, dignity, and fairness along with handling difficult neighbor service situations. Does the pantry hold on to a mission statement? Do they make a commitment to uphold their values surrounding neighbor service and inclusivity? How about online listings? Does the pantry make efforts to keep online listings current and relevant to its distributions? Do they have social media platforms and/or online web pages like Facebook that let neighbors know current information more easily accessible to them? This follows into using digital platforms. Does the pantry share information about food distributions, healthy recipes, or pantry hours on social media for their website? If your pantry makes any of these efforts, you may check off any that apply for 5C. After you go through all 3 practices for Objective 5, you may tally up the total number of boxes checked and scored. There are a total of 12 points possible. And that concludes Objective 5 of the NEFPAT Plus. Let's get into Objective 6 of the NEFPAT Plus now. This objective is all about prioritizing health and inclusion. This objective looks at the pantry's efforts to not only provide nutritious food options, but also fosters a welcoming, inclusive environment for neighbors, team members, and the community as a whole. There are 7 sub-objectives that make sure the pantry supports health and inclusion in the pantry setting. We begin with Section 6A. Here you'll be looking for a system to identify nutritional value of the food distributed at the pantry. This might include SWAP, which stands for Supporting Wellness at Pantries, and this ranks foods based on their nutritional value. Perhaps you use the MyPlate guidelines. These guidelines categorize foods in groups and makes recommendations for balanced eating. Offers food samples. This gives them a taste of nutritious food options. Other assessment methods. Ask the pantry if they use other methods to grade the food that they receive and distribute. If the pantry uses the methods listed or their own methods to grade food, please check off the box for Section 6A. Remember that the goal here is that the pantry prioritizes the nutritional quality of the food it receives to distribute, so this may be looking different for each pantry. Section 6B. It uses a labeling system to assist neighbors in making healthy food decisions based on special dietary needs. This might include labels that clearly display foods that are vegetarian, gluten-free, diabetes-friendly, or low sodium. They may also use symbols or color codes that indicate different nutritional needs. If the pantry uses a labeling system, you may check off this box for Section 6B. Section 6C is looking for samples that the pantry might offer in order to further encourage neighbors to make healthier food choices. This is also a method of nutritious food promotion. Pantries that offer tasting for familiar or unfamiliar items rich in nutritional values, recipes found on recipe cards given to neighbors, and plain slices or small bites of fresh produce can all count towards this section. If the pantry provides food samples to help promote these nutritious options, make sure to check off 6C. Section 6D talks about the involvement of neighbors in decision-making process at the pantry. This may look like having a focus group consisting of neighbors that benefit from the pantry, or holding time slots for open discussions about the process that takes place at the pantry. Involving neighbors in these decisions help create a pantry environment that listens to the needs of the community. If the pantry makes any of these efforts, you may check off the box for 6D. Moving on, we have 6E, which looks at if the pantry is actively seeking out and responding to neighbor needs. Do they ask about culturally familiar food needs? Offer a variety of ways for neighbors to share their specific dietary needs? Provide preferred language options for written materials? Or the pantry may also encourage donations or use funds on these needs too. Next, we have 6F, and this section talks about the space of the pantry and whether it's welcoming and inclusive for the neighbors that use it. Does the pantry have signs and resources that are written at the appropriate reading level to support health literacy? How about translated materials? Is there a variety of languages for the communicated information given to the pantry? The use of inclusive images and languages in the signage and resources are used to make neighbors feel respected and valued. If the pantry meets these criteria, you may check off Section 6F. And finally, we have Section 6G. This section provides volunteer education on relevant topics related to nutrition education, food safety, and neighbor service. If the pantry has this type of education available to volunteers, you may check off the corresponding boxes for Section 6G. Remember that by focusing on inclusion and health, a welcoming environment, a safe space, the pantry is better able to serve the diverse needs of the community. And that concludes Objective 6 of the NEFPAT Plus. Let's dive into the last objective of the NEFPAT Plus, Objective 7. Starting off with Section 7A, this section is looking at the pantry's external groups and partnerships. Some of these might include healthcare or public health organizations, cultural or population-specific groups, universities, colleges, or schools, youth groups or after-school programs, and community coalitions or networks. These partnerships help in the promotion of nutrition, meeting the needs of particular communities, and giving access to programs that engage kids in healthy eating and cooking. And they may even have community extension programs that offer education and resources to improve the community health and well-being. If the pantry is involved in any way with the external groups or partnerships, you may check off this section. Next, we have Section 7B, which focuses on whether their pantry offers education, programs, or resources to neighbors. This can either be directly or indirectly through partnerships. Some common examples include nutrition or cooking demo programs where neighbors learn how to prepare healthy meals with pantry items, or perhaps a gardening program that educates neighbors on how to grow their own fresh produce. Maybe they offer financial education, such as programs on budgeting or general financial education. Occasionally, they host health-related screenings or clinics like blood pressure checks, vaccine clinics, or other general health education. If the pantry offers or partners with any of these programs, make sure to mark this section for them. Moving on to 7C. You want to ask the pantry if they provide on-site referrals or information to local resources such as SNAP application support, WIC, Meals on Wheels, or SFMNP, which stands for Senior Farmers Market Nutrition Program, Medicaid or affordable health care, mental health services, employment services, self or family improvement, physical well-being resources like fitness programs, childcare, housing assistance, veteran resources, disability support, and so on. If the pantry provides any of these services or can refer neighbors to them, please mark 7C. Finally, we have section 7D. This section is looking at whether the pantry provides or promotes services that may assist neighbors with mobility challenges or transportation needs. These services help make it easier for neighbors to access food, especially if they lack reliable transportation or are presented with mobility issues that prevent them from being able to visit the pantry. Some of these services may include mobile markets, like Meals on Wheels, or home delivery service where the pantry items are delivered directly to neighbors' homes. Also, transportation vouchers like Uber gift cards or Metro passes. The pantry may also be making other efforts to bridge the gap between transportation issues that can meet this criteria as well. If they offer any of these services to neighbors, please mark this section. There are a total of 20 possible points for this objective. By fostering partnerships and providing additional resources, the pantry is making a massive impact on the health and well-being of the community it serves. And that's all for the final objective of the NEFPAT Plus. Now that we've walked through how to fill out each objective of the NEFPAT Plus, we can focus on the total score section. This part is important because it will sum up the score and give you and the pantry an overall picture of the pantry's performance. You should already have a score for each objective, so now you can input those scores into the corresponding objective score box. After you input those individual scores, you will count the total points in all and input that score at the bottom of the scoreboard chart for a total of 85 possible points earned. Next, the NEFPAT Plus will ask you to do some reflection. You may choose from yes, no, or unsure for that question. And finally, you'll ask the pantry what experience they have promoting nutrition and health. You may check off all of the boxes that apply to them. Once you complete the section and the self-assessment questions, make sure you review the entire form one last time to make sure all of the sections are filled out correctly and the totals add up properly. When you're ready, you may submit the NEFPAT Plus. And that's how you fill out the NEFPAT Plus form. And we hope this video makes the process easier and more clear. Remember that the NEFPAT Plus is not intended to be perfect, but rather used as a way to determine areas of improvement and where the pantry can continue to grow. Although we have gone through the NEFPAT Plus completely and in great detail, the NEFPAT Plus offers one final page called the Optional Information section. And as the name suggests, this page is optional and is not required to submit a completed NEFPAT Plus as it is not scored. And although it isn't scored, it can help gather valuable insights for creating an action plan for the post-assessment. As we begin, let's start with the sources of food and funding section. This section will help you estimate the percentage of the overall inventory by type and will help evaluate where the food and funding is coming from. And this can be useful to identify opportunities for budgeting, growth, and retention. There are 9 different sourcing options given, and you will fill out the percentage for each one even if it's 0%. After you input the percentages, you will add them up until they total 100%. Next, we have the facility characteristics section. This section looks at the physical space of the pantry and whether or not it is meeting the needs of the neighbors that visit and the team that runs it. There are a total of 7 questions in which you and the pantry will discuss together. These questions help identify areas where the pantry may need more space, more volunteers, additional resources, or other improvements that will help the pantry operations run as smoothly as possible. Next, we have external conditions. This section asks about factors that are simply out of the pantry's control. This might include natural disasters or something where we are all familiar with, like COVID-19. This might also include changes in state or national policies that affected the pantry. You and the pantry will answer these 2 questions and provide a detailed explanation about how any of the external challenges out of their control have impacted or influenced the pantry in any way in the last 12 months. Finally, you will review and submit. If you did go ahead and complete this optional information page, you will attach it to your completed NEFPAT Plus and submit it together. And that concludes the NEFPAT Plus tutorial and overview video. Thank you for watching.